the floor.
Madam President.
Senator Morgan.
Madam President, I rise to address the Surface Transportation Bill that is on the floor today. It has been a mark of the challenges that this body faces in deliberation that we've now been on this bill for 3 weeks. We haven't had a debate over a transportation amendment. But hope does spring eternal. And in the spirit of that, I wanted to come to the floor and share some thinking about amendments that we should be debating and should be approving in this process. Certainly, the underlying transportation bill is a great step toward our #1 goal of passing legislation that would create jobs, put people back to work in the hardest hit sectors of our economy. Building and repairing our transportation infrastructure will create or save 2 million jobs nationwide. Good-paying jobs that will provide a huge boost to our struggling construction industry, to their families, to the workers, and to our economy. You know, this infrastructure that we would be building is a down payment for the success of our future economy. China is spending 10% of its GDP on infrastructure. They're preparing for a stronger economy in the future. Europe is spending 5% of their gross domestic product. But here in America, we're spending only 2%. And indeed, it wasn't but a few months ago that colleagues on the House side of Capitol Hill said we should cut transportation spending by 30 to 35%, which would devastate the infrastructure efforts that are underway, even within the existing 2%, this small amount that we're spending. So is it any wonder that our communities are struggling to repair the bridges and roads that we have, let alone to solve the challenges, the bottlenecks in the transportation lines that need to be addressed for the future. Now, we have made a good start in committee on this bill, despite the paralysis here on the floor of the Senate, because in committee we had elements of this bill go through 4 different committees and incorporate good ideas from both sides of the aisle in each of those committees and come to the floor in a bipartisan fashion. So I want to share a couple of other thoughts to build on this groundwork that came out of our committees. Common sense fixes, cutting red tape and closing loopholes. The first amendment, number 1653, is one that I'm sponsoring with my colleagues, Senator Toomey and Senator Blunt. Right now, farmers are exempt from certain federal regulations when they transport their products in farm vehicles, as long as they're transporting those products inside of their own state. But should they venture across state lines, even just by a short distance, then the federal regulations are triggered. So you have farmers who are simply trying to get their product to market, to the local grain elevator, if you will. And they have to cross the state border. And suddenly their challenge becomes very complex indeed. For instance, Oregon farmers who live just across the border from Idaho. In these cases, the best market might be a nearest processing facility just across the state line. These farmers are exactly the same as their counterparts elsewhere, except for one small fact. The processing facility is across the border. This arbitrary distinction can mean major differences in how these farmers and ranchers have to do business in the form of additional burdensome regulations. Things like vehicle inspections for every trip the vehicle takes, even if the farm vehicle is simply driving from the field to the barn. Or having to adhere to the reporting requirements for things like hours of service rules, even though the farmer is just driving an hour down the road. Or obtaining medical certifications meant for commercial truck drivers. This amendment would simply make life a little more logical, a little easier for farmers by exempting them from regulations designed for interstate transport, not designed to intervene or interfere when a farmer is trying simply to take his product to market. We put limits in this bill on mileage and limits on purpose to make sure it serves the function intended, to get rid of that arbitrary boundary that creates a regulatory nightmare. A second amendment is related to freight. Now, the underlying bill has a freight program that improves the performance of the national freight network, and that is an excellent proposal, and it will help make the improvements that are desperately needed. But there are a few technical improvements that would further improve the bill, and that's to recognize that funding should be used in the most efficient and effective way to ensure that high-value goods are being moved quickly to market. We often think of freight in terms of volume or tonnage, but when you start looking at the high-tech sector, you can have enormously important high-value content, such as that produced by the microchip industry in Oregon. And the roads necessary to make sure that that freight gets to market, that high-value freight driving a tremendous number of jobs, is just as important to address as is routes that involve high tonnage or high volume. So let's turn to a third issue, and that is Buy America. And I salute my colleagues, Senator Sherrod Brown and Senator Bernie Sanders, who are working on these issues. We recognize the principle that if we are paying to complete a public infrastructure project in America, it only makes sense for American businesses and workers to do as much of the work as possible. But there are several loopholes that have undermined this basic premise in recent years. So Amendment number 1599 is an amendment that addresses one of these loopholes. This summer, construction of a rail bridge in Alaska to a military base will be undertaken by a Chinese company because the Federal Rail Administration, unlike the Federal Transit and Federal Highway Administrations, doesn't have the Buy America provision. An American company was ready to build this bridge, but because of this loophole, the contract went to a Chinese company using Chinese steel. So, isn't it frustrating that the infrastructure to provide access to a military base involves the jobs and the steel going across the Pacific Ocean? Then I wanted to note that a related amendment led by Senator Brown, Senator Sherrod Brown, is number 1807, addresses another Buy America challenge. States have been using a project segmentation loophole to avoid putting Americans to work, to avoid buying American steel. The Bay Bridge in California is split into 12 separate projects. 12 separate projects, so that federal funds would only apply to a couple of those pieces. And this allowed the bulk of the bridge to be built, you guessed it, Chinese steel, Chinese workers. My amendment is modeled after a Republican amendment in the House Transportation Bill by Representative Kravick from Minnesota to close this loophole and ensure the spirit of the law is upheld. Again, these provisions were incorporated into the amendment led by Senator Brown, Sherrod Brown. I urge my colleagues to support these amendments to make these simple, common-sense fixes to our transportation programs. We must have debate over amendments on this floor. This room should not be empty. The conversation should not be quiet, because transportation is at the heart of our economy. We have a construction industry flat on its back. We have interest rates that are low, and we have infrastructure that needs to be built. So this is a win-win for our future economy and for our current workers and our current economy. So let's get to work. I ask my colleagues who continuously object to amendments being debated and For those who are listening in, the Senate has had a rule that any senator can block amendment. You have to get 100% of the senators, 100 out of 100, to agree to bring an amendment to the floor. And the social contract that allowed this to happen in a regular and orderly fashion in the past has been broken. So while families across this country look to us to put a transportation plan into place for our future economy and to put America back to work right now, we're sitting here fiddling. So let's end the fiddling and do our work here in this chamber so America can do its work of rebuilding our highway infrastructure. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I do not yield the floor because I have a request. Madam President, I have 9 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders. I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, and I yield the floor. Madam President, I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
On the Senate floor today, continued efforts at moving forward on a transportation bill. CQ reporting today that senators are close to an agreement that would allow the measure to proceed. Work continues behind the scenes. In the meantime, CQ also reporting that House Speaker John Boehner may take up the Senate bill in their attempt to move forward on transportation legislation. It's one of the options he's considering. That bill was set aside after President's Day as the Speaker struggled with opposition from different wings of his caucus. The Senate's expected to recess at 5 o'clock today to about 6:30 Eastern. There'll be a closed-door briefing on cybersecurity issues with Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano.
Senator from...
I ask that the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection. Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate, having received H.R. 4105, the text of which is identical to S. 2153, the Senate proceeds to the consideration of H.R. 4105. The bill is read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of S. 1813, which the clerk will report.
Calendar number 311, S. 1813, a bill to reauthorize federal aid highway and highway safety construction programs and for other purposes.
President.
Senator from California.
Madam President, I thought I would use this opportunity to just inform our colleagues and anyone who is following this transportation debate as to where we are. Yesterday we had an opportunity to stop the filibuster and get right to our bill and get it done and protect 1.8 million jobs and create another million. We didn't do that. Pretty much a party line vote. The filibuster continues. The hopeful sign we had was right before that vote. Republican leader said that he was open to an agreement, to reaching an agreement. I was hopeful that agreement would not contain extraneous votes. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think we're going to face extraneous votes to repeal Clean Air Act rules, to open up our states that rely on fishing and tourism and recreation to drilling when we know the oil companies have millions of acres they could drill on without going to these areas that are so essential to our economic future, just as they are, and our environmental future. So it looks like we're going to face that. We're going to face a vote probably on the XL pipeline, and we're going to face these votes. Again, I'm very sad that we couldn't come together when we have a bill that got an 85-11 vote to proceed to. We still had to face a filibuster, and we still had to lose 2 votes to cut off debate. But the Senate being the Senate, this is it. So now we have to hope that the 2 leaders can agree on a path forward. I am hopeful. I think they are both working together to achieve an agreement whereby we would have some votes on these extraneous matters. Hopefully we won't prolong debate on them, because this is a highway bill. You know, thousands and thousands of businesses are waiting for us to act. By March 31st, if we don't act, everything stops. And, Madam President, your state and mine, all these highway projects are going to shut down that have any federal contribution at all, which is really most of them. So I'm hopeful. I can't report to the Senate that we have an agreement at this point, but I am hopeful that we will have an agreement at some point today. And once we do have that, we have a path forward, and we work together in goodwill, we can get this done. Frankly, I don't think we have a choice but to get it done, because everything, as I said, expires on March 31st, and here we are at March, I think it's March 7th, and we have a few days left before this whole thing blows up, and we have no highway bill, and people are laid off, and in this economic time, that's the last thing we need. We need to fix our highways and our bridges and our roads. So, Madam President, you're a proud member of the Environment and Public Works Committee. You have worked hard to get us to this day. I know you have worked hard to bring this debate to a close and get a path forward, and we can all hope that that happens today. And I'll be back on the floor with Senator Inhofe. I'm hopeful the 2 of us can lead us through this bill and get this bill done, and then have the House follow our, I think, example of Democrats and Republicans working together. They start that over there, they'll have a bill quicker than they think, and we can finally put this behind us and send a message that we're functioning. This concept of a federal highway system was brought to us by a Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower. He understood logistics better than most, and he knew you cannot have a thriving economy if you can't move goods and you can't move people. So I'm hopeful, and I'll be back on the Senate floor when we have an agreement and we can move forward. I thank you very much. I yield the floor. I note the senator from Vermont is here, and I always look forward to his comments. Thank you very much.
Madam President.
Senator from Vermont.
Madam President, 2 years ago, the Supreme Court rendered what I consider to be one of the worst decisions in the history of the United States Supreme Court, and that is regarding the case of Citizens United. In that case, the Supreme Court, by a 5-4 decision, determined that corporations were people and they had First Amendment rights to spend as much money as they wanted on elections. And I think when that decision first came about, a lot of people in this country didn't pay attention to it. They looked at it as an abstract legal decision, not terribly important. Well, the American people today understand the disastrous impact that that decision has had. Because what they are seeing right now on their television screens all across this country is a handful of billionaires and large corporations spending huge amounts of money on the political process. And the American people are asking themselves, is this really what people fought and died for when they put their lives on the line to defend American democracy? Is American democracy evolving into a situation where a small number of billionaires can put hundreds of millions of dollars into the political process in this state and that state in presidential elections and then elect the people who will govern this country? And I believe very strongly that the American people do not think that that is appropriate. I am very happy to tell you, Madam President, that yesterday, at town meeting day in the state of Vermont, my small state, I think, has begun the process to overturn this disastrous Citizens United decision. We had 55 towns at town meeting demand that the U.S. Congress move forward to overturn Citizens United and restore American democracy to the concept of one person, one vote. And what the towns in Vermont are saying, and that's what we do at town meeting day in Vermont, all over our state, people come together and they argue about the school budget, they argue about the town budget, they debate the issues, and they vote. And what people in Vermont are saying is they do not want to see our democracy devolve into a situation where corporations are determining who will govern our nation. So I am very, very proud that in the state of Vermont, just yesterday, 55 separate towns voted to urge the United States Congress to move forward on a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. And I would hope that we would heed what the towns in Vermont are saying. I would hope that other towns and cities and states all over the country would move forward in that direction. And I would hope that the day would come sooner than later where the United States Congress will entertain a constitutional amendment and bring it back to the states. So, Madam President, at this difficult moment in American democracy, it is imperative that we stand up, we reclaim our democracy, and we say to the millionaires and the billionaires and the large corporations, sorry, this country belongs to all of us. This democracy belongs to all of us and not just to you. Madam President, I would like to present to the record the names of the 55 towns who passed resolutions yesterday to overturn Citizens United.
Without objection.
Thank you. I would yield the floor. Madam President, I urge a quorum call.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senators are resuming consideration of the transportation bill today. Yesterday, they voted down an attempt to move forward on the bill. Senator Boxer, a short time ago, came to the floor to express optimism that some kind of agreement could happen today. And again, CQ is reporting that the House could take up the Senate transportation bill as an option. Members of both parties soured on the 5-year House bill before President's Day. There was also an attempt to move an 18-month measure. That didn't fly. The House, by the way, is in recess until noon. At that time, members will continue working on amendments to a bill dealing with hydropower facilities. There was a rural debate yesterday. General debate will continue today along with amendments. The bill would authorize all conduit facilities under the Bureau of Reclamation to be developed for hydropower. They will also be working on a bill dealing with regulations for companies that are going public. You can see the House live on C-SPAN, and of course the Senate right here on C-SPAN too. Waiting for further debate on the transportation bill this morning. While this quorum call continues, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta was on Capitol Hill this morning with Joint Chiefs of Staff Chair General Martin Dempsey. They talked about the situation in Syria. The Defense Secretary resisted new demands for U.S. military involvement in that country. Here are his opening remarks.
Chairman Levin and Senator McCain, thank you for the opportunity to be able to discuss with you the ongoing violence in Syria. This tragedy has justifiably evoked the concern and outrage of the United States government, the American people, and much of the world. At the outset, I would like to stress that the President and a broad cross-section of the international community have stated unequivocally that Bashar al-Assad must halt his campaign of killing and crimes against his own people now. He must step aside, and he must allow a democratic transition to proceed immediately. Furthermore, through its repeated violations of human rights, any government that indiscriminately kills its own people loses its legitimacy. This regime has lost its legitimacy and its right to rule the country. This situation demands an international response. And for that reason, the United States has been leading efforts within the international community to pressure Assad to stop his violence against the Syrian people and to step aside. Unfortunately, this terrible situation has no simple answers. And so the result is a great deal of anger and frustration that we all share. There are some members who are concerned about whether we are doing enough to stem the violence in Syria, and that's understandable. And there are others who are concerned about the dangers of involving ourselves in still another conflict in that part of the world, and that too is understandable. Let me try and address these concerns by providing some context for what is guiding the administration's views on Syria and our actions in response to the violence. The turmoil in Syria is clearly part of a larger transformation that has been reshaping the Arab world for more than a year. The change we've seen has manifested itself in different ways, sometimes through peaceful protests and negotiations aimed at a more responsive government, but also, in other cases, in violent uprisings and brutal crackdowns from repressive regimes. Many countries have been affected by these changes, and although each conflict has its own dynamic, it is part of a broader trend that is fundamentally and irreversibly reshaping the politics of the Arab world. Although this is clearly a challenging and unpredictable period of time, our goal must be to encourage governments to do more to ensure that their people can live in peace and prosperity. As a global leader with a vital interest in the stability of the broader Middle East, this administration has been determined to do everything we can to positively shape the course of events in the Middle East. But each situation, by virtue of the politics, geography, and history of each country, is unique and demands a unique response. There can be no cookie-cutter approach for a region as complex and volatile as the Middle East. Nevertheless, from the outset, we have made clear that our response has been guided by three fundamental principles. First, we oppose the use of violence and repression by regimes against their own people. Second, we have supported the exercise of universal rights, the right to freedom of expression, the right to peaceful assembly, the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, the prohibition against discrimination, and the right to vote through genuine elections that express the will of the electorate. And third, we support political and economic reforms that can meet the legitimate aspirations of ordinary people throughout the region. These basic principles have shaped our response to Tunisia, to Egypt, to Libya, and now Syria. The violence there has become increasingly dire and outrageous. As Secretary Clinton has noted, the Assad regime has ignored every warning, squandered every opportunity, and broken every agreement. We are forging an international consensus that the Assad regime's brutality must end and that a democratic transition in Syria must begin. Although China and Russia have repeatedly blocked the UN Security Council from taking action, the UN General Assembly has given full support to the Arab League's transition plan, delivering a clear message from the international community that the Assad regime has lost its legitimacy, and there are continuing efforts to try and agree on a Security Council resolution as we speak. The administration's focus now is on translating that international consensus into action along 4 tracks. First, we are working to increase the diplomatic and political isolation of the Assad regime and encouraging other countries to join the United States, the European Union, and the Arab League in imposing sanctions on the Assad regime. These sanctions are having a significant impact. Second, we are providing emergency humanitarian assistance to the Syrian people with an initial commitment of $10 million, and we are working to broaden our efforts at relief. Third, we are working with the Friends of Syria and other groups to help strengthen the opposition, to try to encourage the various opposing groups to unify and lay a groundwork for a peaceful, orderly transition to a democratic government, a government that recognizes and respects the rights of all Syrians, including minorities. And fourth, we are reviewing all possible additional steps that can be taken with our international partners to support the efforts to protect the Syrian people, to end the violence and ensure regional stability, including potential military options if necessary. This approach has succeeded in putting unprecedented pressure on Assad, but it is clear that there is no simple or quick solution to this crisis. We believe that the best resolution to this crisis will be a peaceful, political, democratic transition led by the Syrian people and along the lines suggested by the Arab League. We believe there's still an opportunity to try to achieve that goal, although we will not rule out any future course of action. Currently, the administration is focusing on diplomatic and political approaches rather than military intervention. Guided by our approach from Libya and elsewhere, we believe it is important in this instance that we do the following: that we build multilateral international consensus for any action that is taken. 2, that we maintain clear regional support from the Arab world. 3, that we make substantial U.S. contributions to the international effort, especially where the United States has unique resources that can be brought to bear. 4, we need to have a clear legal basis for any action that we take. And 5, keep all options on the table, but recognize that there are limitations of military force, especially with U.S. boots on the ground. Each situation, as I said, is unique. And as I've said, there is no simple solution here. The reasons for the differences between our approach with Libya and the current approach to Syria are clear. Although there has been widespread support in the Security Council and the Arab League for military intervention in Libya, no such consensus currently exists with regards to Syria. For us to act unilaterally would be a mistake. It is not clear what constitutes the Syrian armed opposition. There has been no single unifying military alternative that can be recognized, appointed, or contacted. While the opposition is fighting back and military defections and desertions are on the rise, the Syrian regime continues to maintain a strong military. And as Secretary Clinton has noted, there is every possibility of a civil war, and a direct outside intervention in these conditions not only would not prevent that, but could make it worse. Even though our current approach is focused on achieving a political solution to this crisis, the Assad regime should take no comfort. The pressure is building on the regime every day. And make no mistake, one way or another, this regime will meet its end. We will continue to evaluate the situation, and we will adjust our approach as necessary. Let me close by briefly addressing the United States' broader strategic interests in Syria and the region. The stability of Syria is vital to this region and to Turkey and Lebanon and Iraq and Israel. All of these countries in the United States have a strong interest in preventing a humanitarian crisis in Syria. But perhaps most notably, Syria is Iran's only state ally in the region and is crucial to Iran's efforts to support those militants throughout the region who threaten Israel and threaten regional stability. Unrest in Syria has already greatly weakened Iran's position in the region, and it is clear that Iran only stands to lose further as Assad is weakened further. As groups such as Hamas distance themselves from the Assad regime, Iran is quickly becoming the Assad regime's lone backer. This shows the world the hypocrisy of Tehran. I cannot predict how this volatile situation in Syria will unfold, but the United States has made clear that we are on the side of the Syrian people. They must know that the international community has not underestimated either their suffering or their impatience. We all wish there was a clear and unambiguous way forward to directly influence the events in Syria. That, unfortunately, is not the case. That is not an excuse. That is reality. Our only clear path is to keep moving in a resolute, determined, but deliberate manner with the international community to find a way to return Syria to the Syrian people. Thank you.
Today I rise to speak about an issue.
We're in a quorum call.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you. Today I rise to speak about an issue of great importance to millions of my constituents in New York, our nation's public transportation system, particularly public transit. This is the very lifeline that millions rely on to get to and from work, to bring their paychecks home every single day to their families at night. Various proposals that have been put forward throughout the course of the debate in both the House and the Senate would actually slash funding for mass transit. The proposal advanced by the House Republicans last month to eliminate the mass transit account of the Highway Fund was a stunning misunderstanding of our nation's transit needs. Cutting off public transit from its traditional funding source without providing viable alternatives is just irresponsible. In fact, former Congressman and now Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood called the House bill the worst transportation bill he'd ever seen. Let me state some clear facts. New York's Metropolitan Transit Authority is the nation's largest public transportation system, operating over 8,000 rail and subway cars and nearly 6,000 buses. On an average weekday, nearly 8.5 million Americans ride these trains, subways, and buses operated by the MTA to commute to work, to visit the city, which generates enormous economic revenue, not just for New York, but for our country. Moving these riders into cars flies in the face of any sound environmental public policy and furthers our dependence on Middle Eastern oil. Increasing costs for our nation's transit riders should be rejected out of hand by the U.S. Senate. I will continue to work with my colleagues to ensure that we do the responsible thing and that we maintain transit funding to encourage the use of mass transit and reduce our dependence on foreign oil. Now, I understand, Mr. President, that we have many, many very difficult decisions to make as we debate this bill, but I think stopping New York's transit system in its tracks is just simply not a credible solution. I also have a few amendments for this bill, and each of them is equally as important and addresses different issues. But the first one that I want to address affects me as a mom of 2 young boys who I know will want to be driving at 16. Kids all across America can't wait for that day when they get their driver's license. But there are terrible statistics about teen deaths. In fact, one statistic showed that 11 teens die every single day because of car accidents. And I know that every family in America has been affected by those horrible high school tragedies of kids dying in a car accident, on their way home from the big game, on their way to the prom, every scenario you can imagine in your own mind. And so what we have to do is we have to give our teens better tools, better training, so that then when they get to become full-time drivers and have all of the various permissions allowed, that they are ready for that. You can imagine the scenarios in your own mind. As a parent, I know. Think about texting while driving. You can't imagine how deadly distracted driving is in our country. Imagine the young driver who just doesn't have a lot of judgment. Imagine the young driver who has 5 other kids in the car and they're coming back from the big game and they're all excited and they're all listening to music and it's at nighttime. Those are riskier situations that we know if you give that driver more training before they're in those risky situations, that they will be able to handle them better. Experts agree that the graduated driver's license, basically gradually phasing in teens into the driving experience with different responsibilities and different permissions as they get older, is the way to begin to address some of these risks. It's been a proven effective method in many states that have already instituted graduated driver's license. So I think we need a national priority, a priority that says you must, as a state, put in some basic training requirements, some measure of graduated driver's license to ensure that when these kids get on the road, they have the skills and tools they need to keep themselves safe, the passengers safe, and the other drivers on the road. I think as parents, I think as people who set public policy for our nation, we should be making the safety and well-being of the lives of at least those 11 teens every single day who die our priority. And I think this is a proven way to do it, and we can do it. The second amendment is something that I think basically increases economic opportunity. Now, New York is unique in that we are a border state, and we share a border with Canada. And there is so much opportunity for cross-border transactions and cross-border commerce. And so all this change is very simple, gives authority to our states to invest in critical border crossings such as freight and passenger rail systems. By providing this simple change, very simple change, states like New York, California, Vermont, and Texas will be able to choose to enhance these crossings and I think increase many more economic engines to address our tough economy. And the last amendment, equally as important, it's about jobs. How do we create the economic engine to get America working again? Well, one way is to increase our pipeline, actually do better training for jobs that are available. One of the ways we can do that is this pilot program that's already been proven effective elsewhere. It's called the Construction Careers Demonstration Project, Amendment 1648. Basically, it's a common-sense, proven strategy that if you take workers who need training, low-income workers, at-risk workers, and give them an opportunity to be trained in the building and construction trades, they find employment, they provide for their families, and we reduce unemployment. So it's a very simple change. It's just a pilot program, and I urge my colleagues to support these 3 amendments and to really focus on how we can pass a good, useful, beneficial transportation bill which will get our economy moving. Thanks so much, Mr. President. And I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senators are continuing their focus on a surface transportation measure most of the day today. Lawmakers are under pressure to come to an agreement soon as funding for the Federal Highway Trust Fund runs out at the end of this month. Majority Leader Harry Reid has said that as many as 800,000 workers could lose their jobs if there's no agreement on the two-year, $109 billion measure. Senators didn't get the needed 60 votes yesterday to limit debate, and so negotiations continue. President Obama is on the road today. He is heading to North Carolina. This morning, White House spokesman Jay Carney held a briefing aboard Air Force One, and he pointed out that the president will be spending the time there speaking about jobs in the economy and energy security. The president's visiting a Daimler truck plant near Charlotte, North Carolina, and we'll have live coverage of that on C-SPAN 3. That'll start at 12:45 Eastern. Also on Iran, the president's spokesman talked about the U.S. continuing its dual-track approach and engaging talks with the Iranians regarding the development of nuclear weapons. He said the president's really clear-eyed about the way Iran has approached negotiations in the past and, quote, "We won't relent in our effort through sanctions and other efforts to isolate Iran."